Lake Tahoe is an idyllic location nestled 6,200 feet up in the Sierra Nevada mountains, straddling the California and Nevada borders. With summertime boating and swimming and lush skiing during the winter, everybody loves Lake Tahoe, but mostly they love the gambling right at the Nevada border. Unfortunately, gambling and mountains of cash also offer criminals a reason to ply their trade, and it cost Richard Chartrand, the controlling manager of Barney's Casino, his life. But why? According to documents from the Museum of Gaming History, Barney's Casino ordered their first chips on August 31st, 1960, and set about getting the property ready to open the following spring. Summer's a hot time for Tahoe gambling. Barney's was named after the El Capitan casino owner from Hawthorne, Nevada, who struck a deal with Chartrand to open a new club on an existing pad at South Shore. And since all Nevada gaming characters seem to be incestuously intertwined, it takes a little more than just introducing the main characters in the casinos at the lake to explain what happened. This old photo of State Line at South Shore from the mid-1950s shows the clubs on the mountainside of Highway 50 to the right. Hard up against the state line are the Silver State Club, Bud Beecher's Nevada Club, and Sahadi's Country Club. If you look closely at the sign, it proudly says Nevada's a debt-free state, and it was a state that offered legal gaming, legal prostitution, and quickie divorces. Give us your tired, the state said. You're poor, you're gambling addicted, and we'll have a tax-free haven forever. So tourists and gamblers flocked to the beautiful lake, where gaming was legalized in 1931. Of course, there was gaming at both ends of the lake and nearby Reno long before that, but it was legal in 31. The Doghouse was one of Reno's most notorious nightclubs, featuring a bar, strippers, and legal gaming. The casino had slot machines, roulette, and blackjack tables on Center Street across from the bank club. It also offered drugs in a back room or alley if Saul Tar Baby Toronto was working. In December of 37, the club closed for remodeling. In January, Toronto and his friend Leon Hansen went to San Francisco to score more drugs. They were surveilled by a government narcotics agent, D.F. Carpenter, at the Turf Club bar, and he reported their likely purchase of drugs to the sheriff's office near the state line on the way back to Reno, based on their vehicle's Nevada license plate. 4 hours later, Deputy Chief Sheriff Ben Parks pulled the suspects over on the Verdi Highway leading to 4th Street entrance to Reno. Parks searched their car, found 4 tins holding 8 ounces each of opium, and arrested the occupants. Toronto and Hansen were later convicted. Toronto got 10 years in the Nevada State Prison. He did 7 years of hard time. The San Francisco bar owners, Eugene Bastida and Ernest Olson, did even more time for buying 275 of the tins full of opium from 2 seamen returning from Shanghai, China aboard the USS Charmant. So what has Sal Tar Baby Toronto got to do with Barney's Casino? Well, nothing directly, but this photo shows a Twin States casino resting right where Barney's Casino later stood. But wait, there's a little more. Another famous drug dealer, Waxy Gordon, has a spot here too. You see, during Prohibition, Gordon ran booze and butted heads with Meyer Lansky and Bugsy Siegel. Their boss, Lucky Luciano, arranged a deal in New York with the United States Attorney Thomas E. Dewey, leading to Gordon catching a brick. That's 20 years in prison for tax evasion in 1933. When he got out, he was awarded the West Coast as his drug domain, and he started selling black tar heroin, Toronto's drug of choice. In 1945, they worked together. At the same time, Eddie Sahadi, another San Francisco character, was trying to purchase the State Line Country Club from Nick Abelman. And since Eddie and his brother Nick were rich from running illegal poker games in the Bay Area, they had hookers and drug sellers around them all the time. Toronto knew the casino business in Reno and supplied Sahadi with black tar. It was a match made, well, a little below heaven. Eventually, Toronto got a substantial advance from Sahadi and opened the Twin States Casino next door to the country club. And even with his drug conviction, Tar Baby got a temporary permit for the Twin States Club in early 1947. In June, the Douglas County Licensing Board voted to rescind TERRANO'S gambling permit after just 45 days. The Twin States shut down in late summer. TERRANO was arrested in Mapes Casino in 1952, where he had been living, for transportation and selling narcotics for Waxy Gordon. This time, TERRANO caught 4 years in Leavenworth Federal Pen, and he got a backdoor parole when he died inside at 49. This photo is of the Tahoe Colonial Casino that replaced the Twin States in 48. In June of 54, owner Bill Boses tried to upgrade the club by offering a free art exhibit of paintings by June Phillips and the fluid framing of Fay Noyles Fuller Jr. The following Sunday, he shut down the casino for 2 hours, while 500 visitors and invitees admired the artwork. It was a welcome upgrade. In December, Virgil Pedersen, head of the Chicago Crime Commission, advised that a RENO casino, the bank club, had sent more than $100,000 to a group headed by Tony Accardo. He also said the Chicago outfit controlled several other casinos in Reno, Las Vegas, and Lake Tahoe. The state of Nevada questioned actions and investments at the Cal Neva in Reno, the same club in Tahoe, and the Tahoe Biltmore. All of these were only partially owned by Sanford Adler. Others owned buildings, land, and invested income in the gaming. Plus, Adler was skimming the clubs in high gear. Adler also had to answer for why a guaranteed 1954 Cadillac wasn't given away during the 1954 bingo season. He said he forgot. He still got licensed in 55. That same year, the Cal Neva in Reno was raided by federal agents who went as far as to empty slot machines, trying to get back $388,000 in unpaid taxes. In June of 55, Larry and John Bardacos were licensed to run the Tahoe Colonial with 1/3 each, but that partnership didn't work. By 1956, Bill Boses had had enough of the fun at Lake Tahoe, and he sold the Colonial Casino to Reno Palace Club stockholders Howard Ferris, Frank Cohen, Harry Wheats, and Louis Iacometti. They also bought 2 adjacent acres from D.W. Park, a retiring member of the State Tax Commission, who owned hundreds of acres to the east of the club. The Palace did its best to stay ahead of the Gaming Commission, unlike their neighbors Nick and Eddie Sahadi, who bought the State Line Country Club from Nick Abelman and are credited with running the club from 1950 to 1958 when Bill Harrah bought the property. The Sahadi's relationship with the gaming authorities was rocky at best, with land encroachment issues, sewage problems, illegal water usage, and questionable ownership. In 53, after Eddie passed away, Nick issued Paul Venturi and Anthony Greach a 5-year lease, paying $150,000 per year with an option to buy at the end. Venturi and Greach were known ne'er-do-wells from the Bay Area, prompting Nevada Governor Charles Russell to say, "So they're no good, but they're better than the Sahadis," to which the commissioner from Gardnerville, Wallace Parks, added, "I'm so anxious to see a change up there. It can't be any worse. I vote it should be adopted. Let them buy it." In May of 1959, the new Tahoe Plaza was announced as 21 minority owners banded together to purchase the Tahoe Palace. Their plan was to invest $720,000 to refurbish the club and opened July 1st with 10 tables and 90 slots. The group included 10 previous Tahoe Palace owners. The large investment and plans to purchase the shuttered Cal Neva in Reno doomed the Tahoe Club, which was closed in 1960. The building became part of Harrah's Recreation Center with a jukebox and a soda fountain for those too young to gamble in the casinos that surrounded it. Next door to the rec center is where Barney's wound up. Originally, Barney's opened as a single-story affair, but soon grew to 2 stories of gaming. Barney was a good promoter, having honed his chops at small clubs in the middle of nowhere, most notably Gabb's and Hawthorne, Nevada. And as well managed as those clubs may have been, O'Malley wasn't ready to take on Richard Chartrand's almost immediate confrontation over ownership. The partners were licensed for gaming based on a revised and signed agreement, but upon opening and sharing profits, Chartrand balked his 21.5% cut, saying they had originally agreed on 51% split. So where was his additional 5%? The other 49% was owned by unknown partners. This giant slot machine was the largest in the state for years. It was fun to play for a buck, but it never seemed to pay off, kind of like Richard Chartrand. In 1961, while standing in his front yard, Chartrand says he was robbed of $1,700. He told investigators it involved some bad blood between some of his friends who had invested in the Barney's Club Company and Barney O'Melia. Carl Preston Evans, a Barney's Club and board member, invested $7,500 and hadn't gotten a dime. Also on the board of directors was Irwin S. Soper, a Fresno illegal gaming operator, just like Chartrand, who shared a club above Lamar's Tavern at 1046 Broadway in Fresno. The Gaming Commission told Barney's to get their shit straight or get closed, and the board voted to give Evans his $7,500 back. Soper had invested $37,500 in the casino with 4 unregistered and unlicensed stockholders, and while the board discussed returning their money, they never did. Soper kept their interest in the club and collected under-the-table skim. In 1962, Barney's Casino Incorporated was ordered to pay Chartrand $200,000 for all of his shares after he sued because of the missing 5% he thought he was owed. Then he refused to sell and sued for an additional 15 shares. So Barney's Casino Incorporated sued to make him sell his shares in '63. What a mess. In 1965, Chartrand filed forms to be licensed for a new casino half a mile away from Barney's, where the old Tahoe Village sat. He planned to invest $239,000 for 90% of the casino, and Milos S. Sharkey Begovich would be the casino manager. Woodrow F. Lofton was granted 10% share of the casino because he had an existing loan to Chartrand. In 1966, Chartrand lost his suit to get the extra 15 shares of Barney's stock, and Amelia was happy for maybe a week or so. Then the internal squabbling started up again, and eventually Barney caved and gave Chartrand the title of general manager. Then Chartrand sold 54% of his South Tahoe Nugget casino stock to Lofton and Begovich to pay O'Melia $500,000 and $67,000 for his share of Barney's casino. Meanwhile, Amelia returned to Hawthorne, where he had retained interest in the El Capitan Casino. The purchase price of Barney's Casino put Chartrand on really shaky ground. He was responsible now for paying his not-so-silent partners under the table, but neither club at the lake did that well in '68, and his partners were furious they hadn't gotten their usual skim. On the 27th of August, 1968, 42-year-old Chartrand left his luxurious Skyland subdivision home and drove out of his driveway. A weighted fishing lure dragged behind the Cadillac. When it did, it pulled a guitar pick between 2 wires. When the wires met, the bomb detonated, blowing his car door across the street. Chartrand's body was decimated. His right leg was severed, and the bombing force ratcheted the seat back, blew out the windows, and sent metal shards into neighboring yards. The following day, the police arrested a former Barney's dealer Chartrand had fired. He was released the following day, and the police and district attorney took a way too careful approach afterwards not to make that mistake again during their investigation. According to police files and investigative transcripts from the months following the killing, Paul N. McCoskey told Los Angeles detectives that he had rented an apartment above his plumbing shop to 2 men who were safecrackers and good with dynamite. One of them, Roy F. Pursley, was good at arming bombs and had shown McCoskey one such device, and he and partner Lewis N. Ballard had taken a trip up Highway 395 and over to South Lake Tahoe in late August. The road trip also traveled past Montgomery Pass, where Bud Soper lived, and later Bud opened Soper's Pass Casino. but at the time, credit card receipts showed the men at Tahoe on August 26th. As the investigation into Chartrand's killing dragged on, McConkie told investigators that Bud Soper had forgiven a $1,000 loan he owed him after Pursley and Ballard visited in early August. Why, he couldn't say. Under questioning, Mr. Soper said he and Chartrand were friends, especially after he taught Chartrand how to run an illegal joint in Fresno. Sure, I own 5% of Barney's, and I used to get dividends, so why would I get him killed? Strangely enough, the case never went anywhere. Pursley and McConkie were questioned, but Ballard never was. When he was in prison in 1970 for burglary in Burbank, famed San Francisco private investigator Howard K. Lipset questioned him at the request of Elizabeth Chartrand, Richard's mother. Ballard said he was too drunk while they took that 2-week trip. They were selling sweaters, and if I was that drunk, how could I tell you anything about what happened? Pursley said, when asked about the dynamite in the plumbing shop, well, you know, a man who cracks safes for a living might want some dynamite around. Really, where were the police this whole time? A year later, in 1970, Nevada Attorney General's investigator told a Douglas grand jury, our problems to date would be the lack of physical evidence tying the perpetrators with the executioners in the bombing itself. The way we reconstructed it this time, the bomb was made in McConkie's plumbing house in Los Angeles, transported up by Pursley, possibly with Ballard, and possibly with a third individual who we have tentatively identified as Soper. What a shame nobody went to trial for killing Richard Chartrand. I heard about Barney's from my Aunt Val when I was a kid. She hit a solid 5-spot 60-cent Keno ticket there for $500 in the 60s, and that was a ton of cash back then. So I loved Barney's Casino. When I got to play there in '79, there were cheap breakfasts up the escalator, cheap slots, and 25-cent craps and roulette. What more could you ask for? The $1 cream chip is the first one I remember playing, and I also really liked the $5 purple chip with those horseshoes around the rim. I played all around the lake in the 1980s and lived in Reno when Barney's became Bill's Casino, which I have to admit I didn't like so much. On the other hand, I really hate the change to CVS even more. However, thanks for watching Al W. Moe's Nevada Gaming History. Appreciate it. We'll talk again.